Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine. That is the top story going on right now. It is incredibly sad, incredibly devastating, hard to watch. The whole situation is hard to watch. And surprisingly, Vladimir Putin has really upset a lot of people. I would say the majority of the world is opposed to what Putin is doing right now. As a matter of fact, last I checked, all of this is like breaking news up to the second, so some of this information may have changed by now. It may change between now and when you see this clip. I mean, who knows? Take everything I say here with a grain of salt, but it seems like even China is opposed to Putin doing this invasion. It is incredibly controversial what's happening right now, and the poor Ukrainian people are suffering terribly. I feel for them so deeply, I can't stand it. So in the spirit of talking about that situation, I wanted to just take a look back at some of the things that, these right-wing conservative evangelicals have been saying about Vladimir Putin over the years and what they're saying about him now. It gets weird. So I'll tell you what, with that being said, why don't we take a look at the first clip? This clip is from Lance Wallnau, famed Dominionist. He's on the Jim Bakker show. High profile, very high profile televangelist, actually. He even has his own show now. I have a channel trailer. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but he's actually in my channel trailer praying over a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump.
I pray for this man. Lord, I pray you take the smell of smoke, the disappointment, the bitterness, the anger, the feeling of betrayal and loss. That it must be a terrible thing, Lord, to actually feel as though you've been stolen an election and that the nation that you love is suffering with it.
That's who this guy is. So anyways, this is Lance Wallnau on the Jim Bakker show, late May 2018. It'll give us some insight into how he views Vladimir Putin and Russia more generally. Check this clip out.
I'm suspicious when the establishment right and the entire left all hate one nation. You know what? I'm beginning to wonder what's right with Russia, that they're so vilified by the left. Putin is why is it we cozy up and carries over there bicycling with Iran right now? Hey, Putin is trying to be a friend to the West.
You're wondering what's so wrong with Russia that people don't like it? Is that what he said?
So they're so vilified by the left.
Why is Putin so vilified by the left? Well, there is evidence, hard evidence, that Russia interfered with elections. That is a fact. That was revealed in the Mueller probe. We know that without a shadow of a doubt. That is why people have a problem with Vladimir Putin, or why they did at this moment in time, among other things. But let's continue.
You see, what we did was under Hillary Clinton. You want to know why Putin would ever do something, that even could show up with anti-Hillary influence? Under Hillary's State Department, with the Ukraine and in Russia, the left progressives, the progressives are like, they're intent on ideology. They're like evangelists. They have to get their ideas out there.
The left is like evangelists. They have to get their ideas out there. Okay, well, I think that's just political discourse in general. People want to get their voices out there. That's just how it works. But I think it's super interesting that he is speaking derogatorily about this group of people by comparing them to himself. That's kind of funny.
Their organizations were exporting these agendas through like Soros-funded entities, etc., through organizations into the territory of Russia, where Putin...
This is conspiracy land right off the bat, talking about funneling money through George Soros into blah, blah, blah. He's presenting us with no evidence. He's just making baseless claims. Let's keep listening.
Where Putin actually has gone on record because his public policy has been shaped actually by Christians involved in his own in the Orthodox community.
Vladimir Putin uses the church to bolster his own power. That is why he encourages the church. That's why he makes appearances at churches and associates himself with it at all. He wants to use it for what he can get out of it. After what Vladimir Putin has done in the past week, which is to say, invade a sovereign nation, after all of the lives that are on his conscience, if there was a God, If the church was real and true, I cannot imagine a situation in which Putin would go to heaven rather than hell. I don't believe any of that. I'm an atheist. I'm just saying.
Orthodox community, that he's for marriage between a man and a woman. Don't ever underestimate the hostility that America's system has towards anyone that won't bow the knee to the orthodoxy of the homosexual agenda. So he says he believes in Christianity, and he supports the state church, and he will not, he locked up the Pussycat Riot group or whatever, the group, and he's shutting down the LGBT community.
So he's saying Putin shut down the LGBT community. He shut down feminism. Yeah, absolutely right. He created a state church. Yeah, all those things are accurate. He did do that. And if you protest in any way, shape, or form, he will lock you up for that too. In fact, that's what he's been doing recently. Thousands of people in Russia, true Russian patriots, have been out there protesting the Ukrainian war, and he's been arresting them, and he's openly said they could be charged with treason if he has any reason to think that they oppose what he's doing in Ukraine right now. That is a true patriot. Somebody who goes out there and protests a war despite knowing they could be sitting in a Russian prison for 20 years for treason. True patriotism right there. But that's what he's doing. And what Lance Wallnau is describing here, these are negatives. I don't understand why he's speaking so highly of Putin and citing these as reasons to like him. A state church, hating civil rights of any sort, LGBT activism, feminism, whatever else. How can you possibly defend an extremist like this, a dictator, full-blown dictator? How can you defend a full-blown dictator like this? And this is 2018. We're talking 2018 right now.
He supports the state church.
Just listed that as a point in Putin's favor. State church.
He will not, he locked up the Pussycat Riot group or whatever, the group, and he's shutting down the LGBT community. That is the unpardonable sin to the liberal. I'm not saying that Putin's a good guy.
That's exactly what he's saying. He's trying to pretend like he's not saying it. You just listed a bunch of things that you liked about him, one of which was he set up a state church. You are endorsing him in this. So you can pretend otherwise, but I don't even see the point.
I'm not saying that Putin's a good guy. He's like a mafia chief over there. I mean, Russia's the Wild West still. But I will say that he is not nearly, as a Christian, you probably, if you're faithful to Russia and you're not a danger to his government, you're probably not going to find him an adversary in your own nation. I fear more liberals in America than I fear Putin in Russia.
Why would this guy have any fear of liberals? Like we're going to come beating his door down or something. Oh, are you really afraid of what's going to happen if I criticize you? Give me a break. Okay, so that was Lance Wallnau's position on Putin and Russia in 2018. The next clip I've got, the exact date's not verified. I believe it was February 23rd. I think that this was after the invasion was declared. I think this was after war, full-blown war started to take place. Like I said, unverified, so take it with a grain of salt. Either way, no matter what, at this point in time, when this clip came out, I believe that Putin had already put 200,000 troops on the border and was threatening Ukraine and preparing to move in. And he may have even started the invasion with special operations and stuff. So it was around that time. Putin's aggression was clear at this point when this next clip came out. Give this one a listen.
You want a clear villain in this story? It's hard to make Putin the villain if you have all the facts, because the CIA and Hillary Clinton tried to invade Russia to undercut Putin, to bring the LGBT doctrine in. They had activists there. Putin locked it down, kicked them out, and clamped down like a good dictator does.
It's something that Lance Wallnau seems to be proud of. He's taking pride in a dictator, basically, what did he call it? Clamping down on the LGBT community, aka jailing them, giving them life sentences or even death sentences. Seriously, what's knocking around in there for this guy? What's happening in his head right now? With this context in mind, knowing what's going on in Russia right now, let me show you a little bit of an older clip. This clip's from 2018, mid-July 2018, okay? After face-to-face talks with Russian President Putin, Mr. Trump contradicted his U.S. intelligence agencies and said there had been no reason for Russia to meddle in the vote. Mr. Putin reiterated that Russia had never interfered in U.S. affairs. At this point, it had been proven without a shadow of a doubt. The intelligence community told him that that's what was happening. And then he says this.
People came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer.
Trump went to Helsinki, which is like neutral ground, invited Putin to speak. They got up there on stage, and Trump says all of this stuff, denying that Putin was involved in any way, despite the fact that his own intelligence community told him who it was. It was Russia.
There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing the Russian relationship back to normal, Putin said.
This is what Putin is all about. This is what he's always been about. Putin doesn't make friends with people. He doesn't have friends. He has assets. Yes, he wanted Donald Trump to like him. He wanted Trump to praise him and talk highly of him and all of that stuff. Yeah, he did. Why do you think he wanted that? Do you think he just wanted relations to be good between Russia and the U.S.? Right now, of all times, let's say a month ago, before the Ukraine crisis took place, was the perfect time to have good relations with Russia, especially during Donald Trump's presidency. How did Putin use that goodwill? Putin took advantage of it and used it for everything that he possibly could. He squeezed that goodwill to get everything he could out of it. He took advantage and then threw it away like trash. Putin never liked you, Donald Trump. Putin never liked you. What he cared about was taking advantage of you, using you for what he could get, and he succeeded gloriously. This right here is why people thought that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. This is why they thought there was a dossier on Trump, because of this kind of thing. And you know what this caused in the U.S.? You know what ripple effects took place as a result of Donald Trump praising Putin and denying what his own intelligence community told him? Do you know what happened? We got things like Lance Wallnau defending Vladimir Putin all over the place, talking about how great he is. We got a faction of people who love Vladimir Putin, bizarrely. Literally, U.S. citizens writing love letters to Putin. Seriously, I'm not joking. After all that Helsinki stuff happened, where Donald Trump denied everything that his intelligence community was telling him, after all that happened, Rachel Maddow came out with a clip about the whole weird coincidences with Russia and Donald Trump. Listen to this. Mid-July 2018, Trump met with Putin that day in Helsinki, I think July 16th. This was like the next day, I think. Listen to this.
I mean, there was no explicable reason why, as a presidential candidate, he would step with such excruciating care to avoid ever saying anything remotely negative or critical about Russia and its president. There was no explicable reason why he would dig out of the vault a campaign chairman who had not worked in American politics for more than a generation, but he had spent more than the past decade doing Vladimir Putin's political bidding overseas in the former Soviet Union.
That's Paul Manafort is who she's talking about. It's the guy on the right here next to Ivanka. If you're looking at the screen for the audio audience, it's Paul Manafort. There were a lot of really weird coincidences, a lot of really questionable things, questionable decisions that Donald Trump made leading up to this whole thing, all the way through his presidency. Questionable, weird situations that honestly shouldn't have even happened. Like, it made no sense. Why did he love Putin so deeply? His love for Putin created the atmosphere for Lance Walnut and others to love Putin too. Check this clip out. This is Michelle Bachmann, mid-November 2020. This is after Trump lost the 2020 election. This was her reaction to it. I just want to reintroduce you to Michelle Bachmann, and then we're going to take a look at what she's up to now, what her opinions on Russia are now. Listen to this.
I ask, oh God, that you would take your iron rod, and I ask that you would smash the clay jar of deceit in America. Smash the clay jar of delusion in the United States of America. Smash the delusion, Father, of Joe Biden as our president. He is not. Yeah. Would you take your iron rod and smash the strong delusion that Nancy Pelosi does have her House of Representatives? We don't know that. Smash it.
Yeah, so obviously this was pretty soon after the election. I guess we didn't technically know this stuff. Not yet. The votes were still being counted, but we knew. We had a good idea of who was going to be the Speaker of the House and who the president was. I mean, we had counted up to this point, and we had determined it was mathematically impossible for Trump to take the presidency with the remaining electoral votes. It wasn't going to happen. So really what she's saying here, this is the height of refusal to accept reality. As she calls it, delusion. Those are the words that she used. She was a member of Congress for a while. I'm not sure which state now, I forget. But anyways, point is, she was very influential at the time. She's still pretty influential, very influential in a lot of evangelical circles. And she's on Fox News as an expert or, a contributor or whatever else all the time. I don't think she has her own show, but she contributes, does interviews on there and stuff like that. So what does Michelle Bachmann have to say about this whole Russia situation? This is February 20th, 2022, pre-invasion. This is pre-invasion, but tensions were obviously through the roof. Putin had maybe 150,000 troops on the border at this moment, or 200,000, and it was pretty obvious that he was planning an invasion. I mean, obvious to everybody at this point. And the U.S. was releasing intelligence that Putin was about to invade. The intelligence community came out and said, these are his plans. This is when it's going to happen, so on and so forth. We knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. Listen to her reaction to this whole situation February 20th.
This smelled like the biggest fake I had ever seen from the very beginning. When the news media got their little talking points and they had to start talking about this, it all sounded fake. And now we're finding that everybody folded their cards. They're going to go home. That's not a war.
I'm sorry. What? Nobody ever folded their cards and went home. That was never on the table. What is she even talking about? Now we find out that everyone folded their cards? A few days before the full invasion, Russia's state media reported that they weren't invading and they'd started the troop drawdown process, withdrawing back into deep Russian territory. Nobody believed that, and in fact, the intelligence community, who'd been correct about everything all along, said that Russia's actions are the best indicator for their intentions, and they were actually continuing to move troops to the border and had begun building field hospitals, something we could see happening with actual satellite imagery that was released. My confusion arose because I didn't realize anybody actually believed what they were saying, which directly contradicted the evidence. So that's my mistake. It was being reported at the time. She was just listening to Russians rather than our own intelligence community and her own eyes. What news is she consuming that led her to that conclusion? I am genuinely confused by this.
Everybody folded their cards. They're going to go home. That's not a war. This is a fake. This was a fake. That's my opinion.
If you're watching this 5 years in the future and you don't know the timeline of events, I'm going to lay them out for you just in case so that it's easy to understand. What happened was Vladimir Putin, for the past year, has been laying troops out along the border, along the Ukrainian border. He started this in roughly March, or this is when it was noticed at the very least, March of 2021, I believe. And then by mid-February, he had a buildup of around 150,000 to 200,000. It's hard to have exact numbers. He starts making demands in mid-February, starts telling people, you know, if you don't do this thing or that thing, then I'm going to invade. Everybody felt like it was probably mostly empty threats or probably just being used as leverage to get something that he wanted. And then the U.S. intelligence community started coming out with information like Putin is planning to create a justification for this war. He's going to create a false flag. In fact, he's hiring actors to act in these false flag videos that he intends to release, things like that. So the plan for the intelligence community in the U.S. was to tell the world exactly what his plans are to undermine those plans. The U.S. just said, you're going to release a false flag video where people are crying and stuff. You've hired actors for it. Well, now if you release a video of people crying and all this stuff, it's going to have a lot less credibility to the world, basically. That's what the intelligence community was going around doing. They were releasing the information prematurely to basically undercut Russia's credibility. And every time they did it, Russia would back off that, and then they'd start a new idea, a new campaign, a new justification or pretext for this war that they wanted to start. It looks like on the 21st in U.S. time, possibly the 22nd in Ukrainian/Russian time, not super sure. On the 21st is when Putin then declared two territories, basically two states within Ukraine, pretty much equivalent to like California and Florida. He comes in and says, California and Florida, I'm now recognizing them as independent, and I'm defending them, and I've signed peace treaties with them, and I will defend them to the death. That's basically how he did it. So the two territories were called LNR and DNR. I don't know how to pronounce the names exactly. It's not really in my language, but anyways, that's what he did. He pretty much declared that two states of this sovereign country were independent, and he was moving his troops in to defend them. Similar to if he was doing this in the U.S., it would be like saying, Texas and California are now, I recognize them as independent, I'm moving my troops in. That was, I believe, on the 22nd, maybe the 23rd in Ukraine. It depends on what time it actually took place. But after that, I think it was only a day, Russia says they're doing a special operation in western Ukraine, which is near where the capital was. And then they just flat out declared war on Ukraine on the 23rd, I believe. Full-blown invasion, troops moving in from every direction. They tried the old blitzkrieg military tactic, which is where you just throw everything you've got at it as quickly as possible to take them off guard. And to everybody's surprise, Ukraine held. People could not believe it. Ukraine stood. Russia did gain a little bit of territory. They got their victories in. But the main cities are still under Ukrainian control as of this moment. This is currently, when this is coming out, this is the fourth day of invasion when this comes out. So at this moment, Ukraine still holds most of its territory. That may be different by the time you see this. But everybody has completely lost their minds over the fact that Russia did this. It's one of the most devastating and sad and heartbreaking things that I've seen, I think, in my life. And for some bizarre reason, we've got Republicans coming out here defending something that over half the world has flatly condemned. Putin has been doing his best to basically rebuild the Soviet Union for a while, a couple years, maybe even a decade. He's probably been working behind the scenes to do this longer, maybe. And when he finally invaded, to my surprise, only a few states sided with him after the full invasion. He brought in Chechen troops from Chechnya, and he brought Syrian troops from Assad. So those are the two countries that were willing to send troops in, though he's extremely friendly with others. Some of the countries that he's most friendly with are Kazakhstan, United Arab Emirates, and some others. Hungary, he asked those countries to send troops in, and they refused, because this is such a clear, blatant violation of human rights and international law. It absolutely blows my mind. Basically nobody sided with Putin in this. Basically nobody. Even China denounced what he was doing, or at least they didn't denounce it. China asked him to solve this through negotiation, diplomatically. That's what China did. They did not denounce. I misspoke. China asked him to solve this diplomatically. When China feels or appears to feel like you're going a little overboard with this, you know you've done something wrong along the way. I feel comfortable saying at this point, pretty much anybody who supports Putin and stands behind him and believes in this, like any U.S. politicians that do, I'm comfortable saying they're a Russian asset. Knowingly or unknowingly, I'm comfortable saying they're a Russian asset. I would even be willing to go as far as to say they've likely taken money from Putin and their finances should be investigated, because this is the clearest, most blatant example of an absolute horror show that I have ever seen in my life. There is nothing right about this. But bizarrely, the Christian conservative wing, the extreme wing of the Republican Party, stands behind Putin. They stand behind him still. Check this one out. This is Lauren Witzke. I've talked about her a few times. This clip came out mid-October 2021. I just want to play this one to give you an idea of who she is, and then we'll play her response, her reaction to the Russia-Ukrainian war that's taking place right now. By the way, she is a candidate for Congress, so keep that in mind while watching. Listen to this, mid-October 2021. She's talking about how persecuted white people are.
White Christian males or white straight males are the most persecuted class demographic in the United States of America right now, especially in the workforce.
White Christian males are the most persecuted people in America right now. That is what she just said. There is nothing about that is linked to reality in any way.
The anti-white system that advocates for us, like people like us, to not have a voice, to not have any rights, like kind of considering us like second-class citizens that don't deserve rights, is what they kind of try to treat us as. They think that the system, the anti-white system, is going to spare them too, and it is not. This anti-white system, it's coming for all of us.
Nobody wants to take your rights. Nobody wants to take your voice. How do you even engage with this level of discourse? Honestly, I don't even know what to say about this. This is so disconnected from reality. How do you even address it? This isn't even the worst of what she said either. This isn't even the worst of it. I just want to give you a little sample so you remember who she is. If you haven't seen these clips, you should go back and watch them. I've done stuff on her in the past. For a while, she was on True News with Rick Wiles. I think she moved on to do her own show after that. Well, guess what? On her own show, she came out with a clip about what's happening right now. This clip came out February 23rd, 2022. I believe this is after Putin declared DNR and LNR independent territories. I think it's pre-invasion. Don't quote me on that. The timelines are a little bit muddy. It's hard to tell what time it was in which area and what time this came out and stuff. But this is around the time of the invasion, and Putin had certainly gotten extremely aggressive with people at this point. Listen to this.
Here's the deal also, Russia is a Christian nationalist nation. They're actually Orthodox Christian. I'm Russian Orthodox. So, I actually support Putin's right to protect his people and always put his people first, but also protect their Christian values. I identify more with with Putin's Christian values than I do with Joe Biden. There is that. There is that there. Christian nationalist countries also are a threat to the global regime, like the Luciferian regime. It wants to mash everything together, but Putin takes care of his people. He looks out for his people. I watched as he deported, they literally walked them through the streets, the criminal illegals who were coming into their country. Yeah. They walked them out and they escorted them out and they said, get out. I can respect that. I can respect that. And I can respect the fact that Putin does everything he can to protect his people.
This is honestly bordering on treason. Maybe at this point, maybe the U.S. didn't view Russia as an actual enemy. Russia viewed the U.S. as an enemy. I can tell you that without a shadow of a doubt. Russia has been talking a lot of smack about the U.S. in the past few days, in the past week or so. Russia does not like the U.S., and guess what? It never has. It never has. The U.S. has a weirdly high number of people who love the dude, who write love letters to Vladimir Putin. Why would somebody who lives in the United States write love letters to Vladimir Putin? It's just confusing as hell, honestly. It just blows my mind. And here we have Lauren Witzke telling us that she loves Russia and respects Putin and wants him to be the new leader or something. I mean, like, what is she even getting at? This is in the middle of an invasion of a sovereign country that was a democracy. And guess what? Something that she seems to admit here, Putin is a dictator. It seems clear to me that Lauren Witzke, candidate for Congress, Lauren Witzke, wants dictatorship, wants to abolish democracy. How else am I supposed to take this? At this point, I feel comfortable saying Russia should be considered an enemy of the state at this moment. Not because I want it that way. I don't want that. I want to be friendly with Russia. I want to be friendly with everybody. I don't want war. No war, please. Russia hates the United States and the West more broadly. Always has. Always will, probably, till the dude dies, you know? Dude will always hate the West. You hear it in his rhetoric. You hear it in the things that he says, the things that he does are indications of how he feels about the West. It's clear to me Putin doesn't like the United States and never will. And as a result, he will only use the United States and people in it to his advantage and nothing more. It seems obvious to me. As a matter of fact, he's trying to use the other states that he has gathered in his little circle. Chechnya, Syria, Hungary, Kazakhstan, all of them. He basically just asked them to send troops in to support his invasion of a sovereign country. That's called using them. They are not friends. They are allies. They are people that you're using. They're Russian assets. And that is a really, honestly sad way to live. Everybody that you know, everybody you deal with, it's all about how you can use them and nothing more. It's really, really sad. But the fact that I feel a lot of people have come to realize that that's how Vladimir Putin views things, the fact that that's the case makes me wonder why people like Lauren Witzke are straight up praising Putin and telling people that they like him more than they like Joe Biden and they want him as the president and stuff like that. What is happening right now? What is going on? How did this pro-Putin wing start? How did this pro-Putin wing move through the country like this?
People came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be.
That's how it started. Like that. Donald Trump saying all kinds of good stuff about Putin, pumping him up until his followers were seemingly like Putin fans. You think that's bad? Just wait. There's more to this story. Check this out. This is at a Trump rally, an actual Trump rally. A rally where people went who wanted to support Donald Trump. These two guys here are from Ohio. Their shirt says, "I'd rather be a Russian than a Democrat." I'd rather be a Russian than a Democrat. I believe this is from 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. There is a deep undercurrent of love for somebody who has declared themselves our enemy in the United States, a deep undercurrent for it, and it's incredibly concerning. Donald Trump supported Russia and Vladimir Putin back then, right? He supported them back then. So how does he feel now? This clip came out February 22nd. This is after Putin declared DNR and LNR sovereign territories or independent territories, but before the full invasion. Listen to this.
What went wrong was a rigged election, and what went wrong is a candidate that shouldn't be there and a man that has no concept of what he's doing. I went in yesterday and there was a television screen, and I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine.
That's wonderful? That's wonderful? Why is that wonderful? It was the precursor to a war. How are you sitting here praising the guy? How are you justifying this in your head? This is so incredibly wrong. So insanely, heartbreakingly wrong.
I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more Army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace all right. No, but think of it. Here's a guy who's very savvy. I know him very well.
If that's not enough to tell you that Trump is a Russian asset, willingly or not, and if it's not enough to show you that there is a deep undercurrent of Russian assets in the United States right now, check this clip out. Guess what? This Tucker Carlson clip was played on Russia Today, their state media, their propaganda network. It even has Russian subtitles on it. Listen to what clip Russian propaganda networks played to convince their people that the U.S. stood behind them in their invasion of Ukraine.
Since the day that Donald Trump became president, Democrats in Washington have told you have a patriotic duty to hate Vladimir Putin. It's not a suggestion, it's a mandate. Anything less than hatred for Putin is treason.
No, I have to say, what Tucker Carlson is doing right now, in my opinion, is very, very close to full-blown treason, really. It really is. I don't know if it would qualify under the statutes and the laws, but from a moral perspective, in my opinion, this guy has committed treason.
Many Americans have obeyed this directive. They now dutifully hate Vladimir Putin. Maybe you're one of them. Hating Putin has become the central purpose of America's foreign policy. It's the main thing that we talk about.
No, guess what? We just realized that Putin uses people for what he can get out of them, and obviously hates the United States, hates the West, hates anybody associated with America. That's just a fact. The dude can't stand us. It's obvious. It's obvious to everybody, especially after the Ukrainian invasion.
The main thing that we talk about. Entire cable channels are now devoted to it. Very soon, that hatred of Vladimir Putin could bring the United States into a conflict in Eastern Europe. Before that happens, it might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Has he shipped every middle-class job in my town to Russia? Did he manufacture a worldwide pandemic that wrecked my business and kept me indoors for 2 years? Is he teaching my children to embrace racial discrimination? Is he making fentanyl? Is he trying to snuff out Christianity? Does he eat dogs? These are fair questions, and the answer to all of them is no. Vladimir Putin didn't do any of that. So why does permanent Washington hate him so much?
That is like so many levels of disconnected from reality. I'm truly having trouble knowing where to start. I'll tell you what, I'll start here. First of all,
has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Has he shipped every middle-class job in my town to Russia?
I don't even know what he's talking about on that one. Shipped every middle-class job in my town to Russia. What's he even talking about? I have no idea.
Did he manufacture a worldwide pandemic?
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to address specifically. The United States, and liberals more specifically, didn't manufacture a worldwide pandemic. I truly have no idea where he's coming from with this one. I'm trying to meet in the middle here. I'm having trouble even finding him. That's complete nonsense, and it did not happen, and I want to make sure that's on record. Let's keep listening.
Is he teaching my children to embrace racial discrimination?
It's all complete nonsense all the way down. And guess what? Russia felt it was the perfect amount of nonsense to use on their state propaganda network. This guy, Tucker Carlson, is a Russian asset. Whether he realizes that or not, he is. He's a Russian asset. They actually straight up use this on Russian TV. Donald Trump is a Russian asset. Lauren Witzke's a Russian asset, whether they know that or not. I truly don't know how they live with themselves at this point. It's absolutely disgusting. And this is a problem that we're going to have to deal with. The undercurrent of love for somebody who hates you, who hates everything you stand for, everything you're about. Putin doesn't like you. If he thinks he can use you, he will. That's as far as it goes. So stop being suckers and falling for it. Godless blessings. Russian nukes are on high alert. WTF. Yep. Really scary stuff, honestly, the situation that we're in right now. I wouldn't freak out about nukes, though. I don't believe for a second that Putin is going to launch nukes. Let me give you a little bit of insight here. Putin's not going to drop nukes on Ukraine. It's not happening. Because, first of all, Putin wants to occupy Ukraine. If he drops a nuke on Ukraine, he can't occupy it. It's going to make it a desolate wasteland. It will make it uninhabitable. He wants it inhabitable because he wants to own it. So he's not dropping a nuke on that. Not to mention the fact that that would be a green light for NATO to go in. That's such a flagrant disregard for international law and everybody's safety. If Putin drops a nuke, NATO is rushing in. They're going to take him out at that point. They have a green light to do so, I'm sure. But he could, hypothetically, and this is what he's threatening, launch them at other countries, probably the US, probably the UK, various different European states. What would happen most likely if the nuclear option took place is he would launch either 500 warhead yield or 2,000 warhead yield, and he'd launch it at every single major city in the world that he didn't like. He would launch it at New York City, D.C., Los Angeles, Houston. He'd hit everything. London, Paris, Berlin, all of them. He'd hit everything. At which point, the rest of the world would do the same to Russia. They would launch nukes at them and glass every city in Russia. Every city. All the way from Moscow into Siberia, I'm sure. They would glass the entire place. Which means nuclear weapons just hit every major city in the world, pretty much. It would end the human race. It would only take about 100 nukes to cause a nuclear winter that we couldn't recover from. It wouldn't happen. Putin doesn't want to end the human race, and that's what would happen, including himself. And if Putin is okay with doing that, with ending the human race, his generals don't want to end the human race because they want their families to live on. And they wouldn't obey an order to basically destroy the human race. I don't believe that it would happen for a second. Vietnam, the fall of the USSR, all of these events, the Cuban Missile Crisis, these things all happened when tensions were through the roof and we did have nuclear weapons and were ready to hit the button. We never did hit that button. We didn't. Russia didn't. It never did happen. The Soviet Union was willing to fall to pieces before it glassed the planet. I believe that that's still the case. I think that governments would fall before they let the human race be destroyed. So Putin is going to threaten nukes. He's going to raise it to high alert. He's going to get his team ready, and he's going to tell them that there are going to be consequences if you do this thing or that thing. He's not going to destroy the human race, which is exactly what would happen if nukes got involved. It is an intimidation and negotiation tactic and nothing more, in my opinion. Hopefully that brings some peace of mind to you. It's possible I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, we won't even know it. It's just going to end. Boom. And we won't have to worry about it anyways. So no point in worrying in the first place. Lulu girl, Tucker's goal is to enrage his stupid audience in this crazy clip. Even Fox toned it down after this Tucker freak out. That's true. And interestingly enough, when Russia was invading Ukraine, when that became public information and, everything was going down, do you know what Fox News was doing? Interviewing Kyle Rittenhouse. That's what was happening at the moment. Everybody was doing war coverage. CNN, Reuters, AP News, MSNBC, they were all talking about what was happening in Ukraine at that moment. Tucker Carlson was interviewing Kyle Rittenhouse. He's a Russian asset, straight up. He's a Russian asset. Whether willingly or not, whether intentional or not, if he's an unwilling Russian asset, then he's called a useful idiot. That's what they used to call them in the USSR days. That's actually a song by Tool. That's how I originally heard the term useful idiot, but here's the definition. In political jargon, a useful idiot is a derogatory term for a person perceived as propagandizing for a cause without fully comprehending the cause's goals and who's cynically used by the cause's leaders. Tucker Carlson is a useful idiot. At best. It's very possible he really does truly fully believe and understand the goals and the intentions and the whole 9 yards. And if that's the case, then he's a traitor to the United States. Either he's a traitor or he's a useful idiot. Nightfall Shadow, they think Russia loves freedom and is trying to liberate Ukraine and that Ukraine is an oppressive, evil country. I know. Actually, I've been watching the Patriots.win, the Donald Trump subreddit, or the X subreddit. After it was kicked off Reddit, it went to that website. They're just in straight up denial. They don't believe Ukraine's even being invaded. And their reasoning is they figure if the news is telling us that it's happening, then we should believe that it's not happening. Not be skeptical, not do more research, but actively believe that they are lying, because that's what the news has always done. So they're going to believe that Ukraine is not being invaded because the news is telling us that they are. Disconnected from reality. Disconnected from reality.